Welcome to the Podkey summary of Kurt Angle. Today's story is Kurt Angle, and it really does cover a strange amount of ground for one career. You've got an Olympic gold medal won through brutal injuries and personal grief, a ridiculously fast rise in pro wrestling, and then a later life shaped by surgeries, addiction, recovery, and one long effort to keep reinventing himself. What stands out is how the same thing kept showing up in every phase. Real athletic credibility, and a willingness to turn that into something people could either admire or loudly boo. The centerpiece of Angle's sports legacy is still the 1996 Atlanta Olympics, where he won freestyle wrestling gold after an almost absurd list of injuries. During the Olympic trials, he fractured 2 cervical vertebrae, herniated 2 discs, and tore 4 muscles. Then he rehabbed, got several pain-reducing injections, and kept going. That medal became the defining example of his ability to compete through extreme physical adversity. And honestly, it's hard to think of many cleaner examples of sheer stubbornness paying off. There was also a heavy emotional backdrop to all of it. Earlier that year, his coach and mentor Dave Schultz was murdered by sponsor John DuPont. Angle left the Foxcatcher program after that, found support elsewhere, and continued training through a club created in Schultz's memory. So the gold medal wasn't just a big athletic win. It came after serious injury, personal loss, and a training environment that had been shattered. By the time that Olympic run was complete, Angle had joined a tiny group of wrestlers to win the Junior Nationals, an NCAA championship, the World Championships, and Olympic gold. USA Wrestling later named him the greatest shoot wrestler of all time. What's funny is that Angle did not come into pro wrestling as a lifelong believer in the form. At first, he rejected it because the outcomes were scripted, and he even turned down a proposed 10-year WWF deal because he didn't want to agree to planned losses. For an Olympic wrestler, that tracks. What changed his mind was seeing people like Stone Cold Steve Austin and realizing this was an entertainment craft, not just a fake version of competition. Once he signed with WWF in 1998, the learning curve was almost ridiculous. He worked in front of a live crowd within a week of training and made television after only a few months of developmental and dark matches. Triple H later said he was probably the fastest learner he'd ever seen in wrestling, because the athleticism was obvious and the performance instinct clicked almost immediately. Then came one of the great rookie runs. In about a year from his televised debut, Angle won the European and Intercontinental titles at the same time, took King of the Ring, headlined major shows, and won the WWF Championship. That kind of rise usually sounds exaggerated when fans tell it back later. In his case, it really was that fast. A big reason Angle connected was that his wrestling persona was built from something real. He had the Olympic medal, the NCAA title, the actual competitive pedigree, and he could present that in 2 totally different ways depending on the story. As a hero, the medal made him look like a role model. As a villain, he used the exact same achievement to mock people and act superior, which made him deeply irritating in a very entertaining way. In the ring, his style mixed authentic amateur wrestling with pro wrestling spectacle. German, belly to belly, and belly to back, suplexes all fit naturally with the angle slam and the ankle lock. That balance is what made him work in both serious matches and comedy. He could be intense, technical, and dangerous, and then a minute later be the guy getting serenaded with "You sucks" by thousands of people. That chant started during his feud with The Rock and Edge, but it stuck around even when he was a fan favorite. At that point, it stopped being just crowd hostility and became part of the character itself. Angle's resume is unusual because it doesn't just belong to one wrestling lane. He won the NCAA Heavyweight Championship, then major world titles in WWE, WCW, TNA, and Japan's IWGP scene. He's the only wrestler credited with winning all 5 of those major professional world titles along with an NCAA championship. That's a pretty good summary of his whole career. Amateur legitimacy, American sports entertainment, and Japanese strong style all in one body of work. His 6 TNA World Heavyweight Championship reigns are still a company record, and he became the first person to complete both the WWE and TNA Triple Crowns. Internationally, One of the standout moments was winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship from Brock Lesnar in Japan, and later challenging Hiroshi Tanahashi for that title. A lot of wrestlers are legends inside one system. Angle's legacy makes more sense if you see it as spanning multiple systems at once. When he left WWE in 2006, he didn't just become a nostalgia attraction somewhere else. In TNA, he became central to the promotion. He headlined Bound for Glory 3 times, helped form the veteran-heavy main event Mafia, and later shifted into helping elevate younger wrestlers after stepping away from that group. That run showed off both his longevity and the instability that followed him later in life. There were huge matches and a record 6 world title reigns, but also injuries, rehab, conflict tied to Jeff and Karen Jarrett, and repeated retirement teases. Then came the WWE return in 2017, this time as a Hall of Famer and Raw general manager, rather than the machine he'd once been in the ring. His final match at WrestleMania 35 in 2019 ended with a loss to Baron Corbin. Angle later said watching those last matches made it clear how much his mobility and athleticism had declined, which helped confirm that retirement was the right call, even though he would have preferred John Cena as his final opponent. The hardest part of the story is that Angle's toughness came with a cost. His career kept getting interrupted by major neck, knee, and spinal problems. WWE released him in 2006 because of health concerns, and years later things were still serious enough that he underwent surgery for a benign neck tumor in 2015. After that, he needed emergency surgery to remove fluid pressing on his spinal cord, after he lost feeling in his extremities. That's the kind of update that makes you stop and remember how much punishment had piled up over time. Pain management became a huge personal struggle. Angle has said his prescription drug addiction reached as many as 65 extra-strength Vicodin tablets a day. He later entered rehabilitation after a 2013 DWI arrest, and has since described himself as clean and sober. What gives that part of the story some weight beyond confession is that he tried to build something useful from it. His Angle Strong app was designed to help people dealing with addiction through check-ins, reminders, care manager support, and communication with loved ones. For someone whose public image was built on powering through pain, that shift matters. Recovery, in that phase of his life, meant finally treating pain as something to manage honestly instead of just survive. Kurt Angle's career is one of those rare cases where the hype actually understates the weirdness of the full picture. Olympic gold through devastating injuries, one of the fastest rises wrestling has ever seen, titles across multiple promotions, and then a later life defined by damage, honesty, and recovery. That's a lot for one human neck, frankly. And it's why his legacy still feels bigger than any one company or one era. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.